Could everyone please be seated? We're ready to get started. Could everyone please be seated? And we're ready to get started. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. Good evening, and welcome to the 30th Sam Lacey Pioneer Awards, hosted by the NABJ Sports Task Force. Please turn your attention to the screens behind me to get a quick glimpse of today's honorees.
Welcome to the 2018 Pioneer Awards, presented by Major League Baseball and the NABJ Sports Task Force. Tonight's honorees. He spent 20 of his remarkable years as a journalist right here in this city. A versatile talent with his words on a computer, in front of a TV camera, or behind a mic in radio. The Sports Task Force Journalist of the Year, Rob Parker. Lowell Perry was a star wide receiver and free safety at the University of Michigan, who became the NFL's first African-American assistant coach in 1957. 9 years later, he was the first African-American TV analyst to broadcast an NFL game to a national audience. His son, Scott Perry, is general manager of the New York Knicks. A true pioneer in Detroit basketball. Brenda Gatlin won nearly 95% of her games as a girls basketball coach and was the first woman in the state of Michigan to coach a boys high school team. She is the first woman to be inducted into the Detroit Basketball Coaches Hall of Fame. Jimmy Ray played quarterback for the Michigan State teams that won national championships in 1965 and 66. Beginning in 1977, he coached 36 years in the NFL as an assistant, including 13 years as an offensive coordinator with 7 different teams. His son, Jimmy Ray III, is senior personnel executive with the Detroit Lions. One of the most feared hitters in Major League Baseball in the 60s and 70s, Willie Horton hit 20 or more home runs 7 times in his 17-year career. 14 of those years were with the Detroit Tigers. He played in 4 All-Star games and helped Detroit win a World Series. At the age of 20, Spencer Haywood was a bona fide superstar on the basketball court and a courageous champion for the rights of young players to earn a living. His Supreme Court victory in 1971 set the table for the freedom and multi-million-dollar contracts NBA players enjoy today. He was inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in 2015. And now, your co-hosts for the evening, Ron Thomas, Director of the Journalism and Sports Program at Morehouse College in Atlanta, and Ray Richardson of KMOJ-FM in Minneapolis.
I'm Ron Thomas, the director of the Morehouse College Journalism and Sports Program, and your co-host for the evening. Thanks so much for joining us for the second Pioneer Awards program we have held in Detroit. In 1992, we honored Dave Bing, Lem Barney, Coach Will Robinson, and journalist Tom Greer. As you can see in the program book you have that contains the history of the Sports Task Force and this event. We believe this year's class is just as strong. In 2003, the name Sam Lacey was added to the Pioneer Awards because this great sports columnist at Black newspapers exemplified the integrity and boldness we all aspire to. In the early 1940s, there were no Black players in Major League Baseball, the NFL, or the new NBA. Sam and other Black sports writers spoke out vehemently against racism, and Sam's television broadcasting made him one of the early multimedia sports journalists. Today, each honoree will be introduced either by me or my co-host, Ray Richardson, the longtime sports writer who now is the host of the R&B Oldies show Back in the Day on KMOJ-FM in Minneapolis. Each honoree will be given a plaque symbolizing his or her sport, Sam Lacey's autobiography, Fighting for Fairness, and my book about the NBA's first Black players, They Cleared the Lane. For the first time, we've been aided this year by producer George Richard III from ESPN. We could not bring this program to you without our sponsors, and Major League Baseball is our primary sponsor for the 11th straight year. So after we play a short video, I'd like to invite to the podium to greet us Renee Tirado, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Major League Baseball.
1, 2, 3, go me!
It's an honor to be here, and I'm very grateful. It's fun. It's a one-in-a-lifetime thing.
It's a privilege, honestly, to be the first group of girls to come out here, play for MLB, to work with gold medalists.
Yep, go. Good.
I'm learning just to compete, showcase my skills. A lot of greats here, so learning just to ask a lot of questions, be a sponge, just making relationships, making friendships, just trying to have fun out here.
Good. There you go.
It's an awesome experience. I mean, I dreamed of myself being an MLB player, but I never expected to be brought to one of the top camps in baseball.
One more now, one more, man. There you go. I knew you can get it done.
Hey, good job, fella. Good job.
Good evening. One more again. Good evening. All right, thank you. As mentioned, my name is Renee Tirado, and I am the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for Major League Baseball. On behalf of Commissioner Manfred, Major League Baseball is so happy to be a proud and ongoing supporter of the NABJ conference every year, and especially to be a part of the Sam Lacey Pioneer Award. So thank you. Sam Lacey, what else can we say that we don't already know? Such an important part of history, especially baseball history, but American history in general. We know that Sam was key, right there alongside Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey, integrating baseball and sparking a movement that led to a necessary evolution in this country. As a writer, Sam gave a voice to those who felt silenced, and he gave hope to those who felt there was none. And more importantly, I'd like to believe that he served as a catalyst to inspire many of the men and women in this room here in the media who to follow in his path and tell the stories that have helped shape our understanding of the world, give insight to our favorite pastimes, including baseball, and inform us on the issues that matter most to us every day. And at Major League Baseball, I'm proud to say that we have stories to tell as well, such as the young, diverse men and women who walked through the doors of our clubs and the commissioner's office this past spring as part of the inaugural class of the Diversity Fellowship Program. Dravion Nelson, a star player coming out of the Houston Astros Youth Academy, who learned the love of the game from his late mother and now is pursuing his professional, dreams at the Angels minor league system. The young men of Uganda and Curaçao, who will be representing their countries for the first time next week at the RBI World Series in Minneapolis. The hundreds of diverse teenagers you just saw in our sizzle reel that have experienced the outstanding elite development invitational at the hallowed grounds of our historic Dodger Town. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention all that is happening in Washington, D.C. this week. But let me qualify that, not 1,600. All that is happening with regard to our boys from the Mamie Johnson Little League. Yes. Who are showing the naysayers and the world in general that blacks do play baseball and the game is alive and well in our urban communities, and we are coming back. And we also have the stories of our players. You hear us often talk about Jackie Robinson and Roberto Clemente, and some of our star players today, Adam Jones, Chris Archer, Mookie Betts, Aaron Judge, all who continue to be among the most generous and community-focused athletes on the planet, not unlike our esteemed honoree, Mr. Willie Horton, who you have been so gracious to recognize this evening. Willie, you have exhibited the grace and class of a giant in some of our most trying times, not only in the city, but in our country. We thank you for providing us with the thrill of seeing you in 4 All-Star games and for being part of bringing a World Series championship here to Detroit in 1968. To this day, you continue to be an extraordinary ambassador for our game, and it is truly an honor to be here with you for this well-deserved recognition in your hometown. Thank you, Willie, for all you are allowing us. Thank you, Willie, for allowing Major League Baseball to participate and share this evening with you. It is well-deserved. And to all, thank you, NABJ, and enjoy your evening.
I told Willie he'd be introduced, but I forgot to mention he'd be introduced by me. So you have to give me a chance to do that. All right. Okay, well, thank you very much. We appreciate your remarks. I also want to acknowledge our other sponsors, NASCAR, which put on a really very interesting panel discussion yesterday about the sport and their attempts to attract more minorities into the sport as fans and as journalists. And also our other sponsors are the NBA and Turner Sports. I'd also like to acknowledge the students, faculty, and staff members of the Morehouse Journalism program that I direct, many of whom helped produce the Martin Luther King magazine you received in your convention tote bags. So if any of my students and staff are here, could you just stand for a second? Anyone who's connected to the Morehouse program at all? Okay. All right, thank you very much. And I want to thank our special guests for joining us tonight, the friends and family members of our honorees who are seated at the front tables, and a representative of the Detroit Public School System, Danya Odom, the principal of Communications and Media Arts High School. Ms. Odom, could you just stand? Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. And now I'd like to bring up the mellow voice of my co-host, Ray Richardson, to bring on our first honoree. Ray?
We direct your attention to the main stage to help us welcome our Journalist of the Year. Please watch the video.
Rob Parker is one of the most thought-provoking, original sports analysts in the television business. He's also a no-nonsense host for Fox Sports Radio and a hard-hitting columnist for theshadowleague.com. If you've watched Rob on Fox Sports 1, you know he has hot takes.
LeBron James has ruined the NBA, whether people want to admit it or not, and we're right in the middle of it.
His predictions are on point.
You ready, Shannon? This is for you. Last year, they lost in a 5-game sweep to the Warriors.
Yeah.
This year, I'm ready right here on the record. The Cavaliers will get swept by the Warriors. That's how bad this team is.
And he's funny, too.
All rise. Time to play You Be the Judge on FS1. I'm going to hold you in contempt of court if you don't agree with me. That's why I bought you a T-shirt.
All right, here we go.
He's the LOAT. Can you see it?
Yeah.
The luckiest of all time.
He's so lucky.
Along the way, Parker also found time to mentor young journalists, including ESPN's Stephen A. Smith, WUSA's Darren Haynes, and the Undefeated's Mark Spears. Rob Parker, pioneer. Rob Parker, mentor.
Rob Parker, our NEBJ Sports Task Force Journalist of the Year.
Come on, it's right. This is amazing. You know what? I want to thank the NABJ present and past presidents
We're talking about A. Sherrod Blakely and Mark Spears and those guys who I both met here at NABJ when they were in college, and the work that they've done. All the honorees up here, I also want to congratulate you as well. Thank my employers, Fox Sports, FS1, Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, who are the greatest guys to work with, Fox Sports Radio, and also the ShadowLeague.com, where I still write a column every week. Right now, I feel like Jerome Bettis, where I came home and won the Super Bowl. That's what I feel like. And I know people are going to say, wait a minute, Rob, you're not from Detroit. You're from New York. And you just have to hear me talk a little bit and say, come on, call me, we'll talk about dogs, daughters, and coffee. And that would probably give it away. But Detroit is home for me. It's where I became a man. I got married in Detroit. I got divorced in Detroit. I also bought a house in Detroit. I bought a barbershop in Detroit. Shout out to Sporty Cuts, the crew. You've heard of 8 Mile, we're on 7 Mile Road. And to be the first black sports columnist in the history of the Detroit Free Press is something very, very special to me back in 1993. It's one of the most proud moments I've ever had in my career. In fact, people embraced me when I came to Detroit. They said to me, we know you're not from here, but we're going to claim you because you represent us so well. I always felt like I was working for the people of Detroit and making sure these bad teams that they had would get better and win. In fact, on the TV show Undisputed on FS1, Shannon calls me Detroit. That's what his nickname is for me. But when I think about my career, I think about all the people who helped me along the way in those 32 years. You can never do it alone. And I got 3 quick stories to really talk about the help that I got, starting with Bill Roland from the New York Times. I was covering St. John's. I was 22 years old, straight out of college. I get to Buffalo to cover a St. John's game. I don't know where I'm going, what I'm doing, anything. Bill Roland looks at me and says, get in the car with me. And he showed me around, took me around, did everything I needed to help me on my way. I go to Cincinnati. I was the first black baseball writer to cover the Cincinnati Reds in 1991. Also, what a great honor. Cincinnati, the first professional team. I got to Cincinnati my first day. I'm in spring training. My laptop doesn't work. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to dictate a story. And Hal McCoy, who's a Hall of Fame baseball writer for the Dayton Daily News, he didn't know me from Adam. And he said to me, I'm going to write my story, give you my laptop to let you write your story, and I'll wait for you. A man who didn't even know me helped me out. And the other story is, I work for Fox Sports, Rupert Murdoch, who runs, of course, Fox Sports, but I want to tell you a story when I was 16 years old, and the high school paper took forever to come out, and I said, how in the world, if I write a story during basketball season, it comes out during baseball season? So I wanted to correct it. So I came up with the idea to start a monthly all-sports newspaper. But I didn't have money to print the papers. So I went to the principal. I asked him, can the school foot the bill for this? And the principal looked at me and he said, we don't have money for the papers, and the kids are only going to throw them on the ground anyway. I wasn't discouraged. I said to him, if I raise the money, will you allow me to do the newspaper? He said, yep. I went home to my typewriter at the kitchen table. I wrote 3 letters, one to the Daily News in New York, one to the New York Times, and one to the New York Post. The Daily News didn't write me back. The New York Times wrote me a letter that said it was against their policy to help other people start newspapers. And I said, I'm 16. But the last one was a letter that I addressed to Rupert Murdoch, who back then was the publisher of the New York Post. He did not own Fox. There was no Fox TV. And Rupert Murdoch, from his office, whether it was him or whoever opened his mail, sent me a check for $50 to start my newspaper. And now I work for Rupert Murdoch and Fox. The bottom line is that we have to help each other. Life is about people, not about things. And at this moment, I want to ask people, if I've helped you at all in mentoring you in your career, can you please stand up and let people see it? I appreciate that. This is what the NABJ is about. It's about the young people learning and moving forward. I'm so proud of all these guys here who have done so many wonderful things. In 1992, right here in Detroit, I met a lot of people, but I want to name two people. I was sitting at a table. Somebody brought a young sports writer, a wannabe sports writer, to my table by the arm, and he introduced. He said, "Hey, I'm Steve Smith from Queens." You all know him now as Stephen A. Smith. Back then, he was Steve Smith, who just wanted to be a sports writer. Also, Chris Broussard, everybody knows him, the NBA analyst at FS1. He was at ESPN for a long time, who is now my radio partner. I also met him at the NABJ back in 1992. That's what the NABJ is special. It's a place where we should help each other to continue this tradition of being sports writers and sports broadcasters. In closing, if you had told me back in 1986, when I started my career at the Wilkes-Barre Times-Leader, covering high school sports, I would be here accepting this award tonight in a place that I love, amongst my people, my peers, I would have said just one thing: no way, no how. Thank you, Detroit. Thank you, NABJ.
We'll get a quick picture with you right here, holding up your plaque.
In the days when the best football players were called 60-minute men because they never left the field, the late Lowell Perry was an All-American receiver and safety at Michigan in 1951. He was known for good speed, and he was blessed with great hands, said his son Scott, the New York Knicks general manager, who will accept our award today. The clip I saw was a one-handed catch. It wasn't a show-off catch. He had to reach down and get it, and the one hand was free. In 1953, the Steelers drafted Lowell Perry, even though he had to complete a 3-year military obligation before he could play. He was more than worth the wait. During his first 4 games with the Steelers, he averaged 24 yards on 14 catches and returned a kickoff 97 yards. He was a star in the making until, in that 4th game, the New York Giants' Roosevelt Greer and Bill Svoboda tackled him on a reverse, and he landed on a steel yard marker. The resulting fractured pelvis and dislocated hip kept him in the hospital for 13 weeks and ended his playing career. It was frightening and heartbreaking, Lowell's wife, Maxine Perry, told SB Nation in 2008. Fortunately, Steelers owner Art Rooney embraced him like a father would a son. "Thank God for Mr. Rooney," Mrs. Perry said. He visited Lowell daily and assured him he would always have a job in the Steelers organization. Mrs. Rooney would visit also. She baked pies and cakes. It was unbelievable. Art Rooney will be with me forever. I can't even think about that man without getting emotional. Lowell decided not to play again because he felt the hip injury would prevent him from regaining his speed. Thankfully, Rooney kept his promise. He made Lowell a receivers coach in 1957, thus becoming the NFL's first black assistant coach. And the next year, Lowell became one of the league's first black scouts, if not the first. During that time, he also undertook his first year of law school, which Arthur Rooney paid for. In 1966, Perry made football history once more when CBS hired him as a color analyst for Steelers games, making him the first black broadcaster of an NFL game before a national audience. By then, however, he had obtained a degree from Detroit College of Law. Academics was always important to my father, so as great as it was to make it as an NFL player, he was always going to define what kind of a man he was going to be, Scott Perry said. Becoming a lawyer or business person was equally important to him. Lowell Perry achieved an enviable career in labor relations, mainly with the Chrysler Corporation and the state of Michigan. In 1975, President Gerald Ford named him as director of the Equal Opportunity Commission, a position he held for 1 year. He died in 2001. Make a living out of what you do, but make a life out of what you give, Scott recalled him telling his children. His thing was you want to help as many people as you can, because at the end of the day, all you leave with is your legacy. He didn't just talk it, he walked it. Which is why, Scott Perry, your dad deserves this Pioneer Award.
First, I want to thank the Sports Task Force of the National Association of Black Journalists for recognizing my father, Lowell Perry Sr., as a Sam Lacey Pioneer Award recipient. And congrats to all of the other recipients who were up here today. I was very humbled when Sherrod Blakely and Ron Thomas called me to let me know that my dad had been chosen as one of the award recipients, and they wanted me to come and accept the honor on his behalf. My sister Meredith is here, along with my first cousin Mark, his wife Pam, my nephew Trey, and very close friends Mark Jones and Alban Williams are here. I really appreciate all of them being here to share this moment, as you were all greatly impacted by Dad. As an African-American child growing up in this country from the early 1930s through the early 1950s, there were a tremendous amount of adversities and challenges that my dad faced. My dad shared in many conversations with me those trials and tribulations. Segregation and discrimination were part of his daily life. And while a lot of pain was clearly present in a number of his stories, one thing became abundantly clear to me. My dad made a very conscious decision at an early stage of his life that he would work extremely hard at impacting change for his fellow brothers and sisters. Through education, perseverance, and the belief that he had to become twice as good as his white counterparts, my father was able to break through barriers and become the first African-American assistant coach in the modern NFL, then go on to be the first black color TV analyst to broadcast an NFL game to a national audience. My dad would move on to a distinguished career in corporate America, as well as in government, where he became chairman of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission under then President Gerald Ford. And through his life's journey, my father recognized something more powerful and more important than just building a successful career. He was moved by his internal calling of becoming a man for others. See, my dad's legacy is that he helped people. Whether it was through helping a man or woman find a job, offering his time and access for mentorship, or simply lending someone a sympathetic ear, he embraced assisting others. I still encounter people today that inform me of the positive ways in which he impacted their lives, it is clear that his spirit is still alive, not only within his family, but throughout the Michigan community and abroad. My father would be pleased to see the number of black journalists in attendance at this conference, who yourselves have successfully broken through many of the obstacles and impediments that still exist in our country. And personally, I have always had great respect for the work and professional service that you all provide. All of us in attendance here tonight are called to set the best example for our younger generation who are following in our footsteps and that are eagerly looking for informed guidance from us. It is our responsibility to diligently work at sharing our knowledge, our resources, and personal time with one another. It is an important part of all of our lives and our own legacies. So I will finish with you giving you a frequently used quote from my dad that you heard just from Ron, from Lowell Perry Sr. You make a living out of what you do, but you make a life out of what you give. Thanks again to the Sports Task Force of the NABJ for recognizing my father. It is an honor for me to receive this on his behalf and on behalf of the Perry family. May God bless everyone. Enjoy your weekend the rest of in Detroit.
Brenda Gatlin worked 43 years in the Detroit public school system as a teacher, administrator, and coach. In 17 of those years, she built an everlasting legacy in this city as a girls' high school basketball coach, becoming a first in many categories and piling up championships along the way. Her impact on Detroit basketball is the reason why she's on our stage here tonight. In 1975, Gatlin led Northeastern to a 25-0 season, a season that ended with Northeastern breaking ground as the first Detroit Public School League team to win the Michigan Girls State Basketball Championship. During a 4-year stretch at Northeastern, she lost only 5 games en route to 8 PSL titles. Gatlin was the first male or female basketball coach to win 3 straight PSL titles. She was the first woman to be hired as an AD at Southwest High School here in Detroit, the first female to coach the women's team at the University of Michigan Dearborn, the first woman to be inducted into the Detroit Basketball Coaches Hall of Fame, and the first woman to coach a Detroit boys team here in high school basketball. And it happened right here in the same year. While coaching the Cass Tech girls team getting ready for the state tournament, Gatlin found out that the Cass Tech boys coach was fired. The AD asked Gatlin to step in when her season was over. Back in the 70s and the 80s here in Michigan, the girls' basketball team played in the fall. The Cass Tech girls lost in the state semifinals on a Friday night. Gatlin was in the gym on Monday afternoon to go work with the boys' team. Her first practice was on that Monday. Their first game was Friday. She had only 4 days to get ready for a milestone moment in Michigan basketball. On the first day of practice, one of the Cass Tech players thought he could run game on Gatlin because she was a woman. He asked Gatlin if she could talk to one of his teachers to change a grade. Gatlin gave him a stare and then told him to go on about his business. The line had been drawn. Gatlin made it clear from day one that she would not relax her values because she's a woman. That player asking for a grade change is an attorney today. Gatlin never had any respect issues from her players, and it showed on the court. On that Friday, the Cass Tech boys won their season opener, holding off Kettering 60-58 behind 19 points from point guard Cannell Lewis. 3 weeks later, Cass Tech defeated Northern, which had a rising star named Derek Coleman. Cass Tech made it all the way to the PSL semifinals here in the city under Gatlin and finished 12-8. Gatlin put her pioneering season in perspective when she simply said, X's and O's are the same in basketball, no matter who's coaching, no matter who's playing. Gatlin distinguished herself coaching girls and boys. Her playbook also included lessons in life for many of her players. On behalf of the NABJ Sports Task Force, we are proud to present a 2018 Sam Lacey Pioneer Award to Coach Brenda Gatlin.
As I reflect back in 1992, Spencer, I think we were on that panel also, weren't we? Should athletes be role models? Okay, we weren't in print. But anyway, having to sit very patiently as someone elaborates on your personal and professional characteristics and accomplishments sometimes produces a certain kind of anxiety. But today, I am extensively delighted to say that Mr. Ray Richardson, an individual I have known quite briefly, who questioned me substantially about my past athletic accomplishments, until I finally said, Mr. Richardson, oh my, I need to go into the archives because it's been 32 years since I blew my whistle in practice and coached and mentored young aspiring athletes. The data becomes a little foggy. I know how assiduous he was in compiling the data, and it wasn't easy. And as an exemplary sports writer, he wanted to ensure that there was no fake news here. However, I appreciate his eloquence, his persistence, as well as that wonderful video presentation. Thank you, Mr. Richardson. To the Sports Task Force Pioneer Awards committee members of the National Association of Black Journalists, I am immeasurably grateful and honored to be one of the recipients of the Sam Lacey Pioneer Award. Very proudly, I extend my congratulatory wishes to the co-recipients of this distinguished award. Please know, I am honored to be listed among such outstanding individuals and athletes who have made their niche through, I am sure, myriad trials and tribulations to reach the pinnacle of greatness in your specific athletic arena. I did not play professional sports nor write a column, but I tried to ensure that each athlete that I have the honor of working with could experience greatness in his or her own way. As I was perusing information about this association, I noticed the number of women who are indeed affiliated and have been recognized. I know that this organization is about diversity, racial, and gender. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the National Black Journalists Association for its notable effort in advancing the welfare of women. Your strong participative role in our society will indeed go a long way in promoting the racial and gender equity in reducing the long-standing custom of gender determining the role one should assume in our society. If you will allow me to use an old cliche, we've come a long way, baby, but we've got a way to go. We have certainly made significant strides in elevating female sports. 3 decades ago, all high school coaches of female teams were women. Our girls played a 5-game schedule, and at the end of fierce competition, culminated in a social event with the host team providing cookies and milk. Today, our female student athletes enjoy a 20-game season ending in a city and state championship, played now in Michigan during the same season as boys. May we continue to move in that direction and forge ahead. In 1969, when I first started teaching and coaching at Northeastern High School, I was a dance teacher who never coached basketball. As the new kid on the block, this coaching job was dropped in my lap. I was a motivator and I understood movement. My student athletes worked hard as I choreographed the plays. I think we finished the season with a 1-4 record. I vowed at that time that any student athlete that I had the honor to coach would never be embarrassed because they did not have the skills to compete. 4 years later, we won the first PSL City Championship in the history of Detroit Public Schools, and the next year, the first state championship ever won by a female team in the city of Detroit, as well as the third team to win a Michigan high school state championship tournament subsequent to its inauguration. As indicated, I always felt that my responsibility was to ensure that my student athletes had the skills and the tools to compete, and hope that the lessons learned would carry over into the game of life. As you know, the lessons learned may have implications weeks, months, even years later. The wins and losses, as I almost forgot, may be forgotten in the years to come, but the life lessons will affect eternity. Basketball or sports is one of the best teaching tools to prepare young student athletes for life situations. I would like to take my last few minutes to recognize and thank some persons who have had a positive impact on my life. I would like to recognize some of my former players. In the audience are the Williams sisters. Now, before Serena and Venus, mind you, we had Annette, Sheila, and Helen, who were instrumental in our winning the first 2 PSL championships in the history of Detroit. And Helen and Sheila, Sylvia Jackson, who is here, who were instrumental in our being Triple Crown winners, winners of the first PSL team, male or female, to win the PSL City Championship, the city championship between the Catholic and PSL team, and the MHSAA State Championship in 1975. Our Triple Crown winners, would you please stand? The Williams sisters and Sylvia Jackson. They were way before their time, I'm telling you. Even though I had many successes as a coach of female varsity teams, I don't know if I would be honored tonight if it had not been for one of my mentors, the late Mrs. Jeanette Wheatley, former principal of Cass Technical High School. Mrs. Wheatley did not allow tradition or custom to prevail when she named me as the coach of the Cass Technical High School boys varsity basketball team in 1985. Because of her decision, of course, I became the first woman in Michigan to coach a class boys varsity basketball team. Her sagacity and 21st century realism inspired her to deviate from the expected and the acceptable. I thank her to this day for believing in me and granting me an opportunity to broaden my horizons as a coach. The young men and I had an amazing season with so much publicity, more than they probably would have had received if history had not taken place. I would also like to recognize one of my former assistant coaches and loyal friend, Ms. Shirley Burke, who took over the team when I became department head and athletic director at Southwestern High School. Thank you, Ms. Burke. Would you please stand? And thank you for your unwavering support. Thank you also to my friends, Kay Jefferson, B. Franklin, who are here tonight, and also my soror, Monica Davey, and Ellen Carter. Would you please stand? Just a wonderful support system. And last but most importantly, I would like to thank my family who provided the foundation which promoted the pursuit of dreams. My late mother for always encouraging me with her unconditional love. My late father, Dr. F. Nathaniel Gatlin, who spent a lifetime promoting education and instilling in his children and his students that gender played no role in one's ability to succeed in whatever his or her life goals are. I thank him also for his unconditional love. And my only sibling, who is 6 years my senior, my big brother, F. Nathaniel Gatlin Jr., along with his wife, Gloria, who is here today and flew all the way from New Jersey. My brother, who even through all the sibling antics, helped me to grow and persevere, teaching me to be brave and strong, and that I could accomplish anything that I set out to do, starting with riding my bicycle, falling a few times, throwing me in the bushes after teasing him vehemently, but I always got up. In his own way, he taught me, it's not how many times you fall, but how many times you get back up that counts. Thank you again, members of the National Association of Black Journalists organization, for this wonderful award and honoring me this evening. Thank you. I didn't have my brother and sister-in-law stand. I'm sorry. I was so emotionally engaged. And also one of my players from Cass Tech, who is now the Cass Tech basketball player, when we won 3 consecutive PSL City championships, who went on to basketball coach. What did I say? Okay. Well, she was my basketball player, but she's now coaching at Cass Tech, taking the team, and she's going to take them to new heights, LaTanya Tate. Stand, LaTanya. Okay.
So we've heard some very interesting stories from some very interesting people, and I want to let you know that if time permits, you will have time to ask some questions. So we hope to have a Q&A session at the end, and then we'll have closing remarks by our chair and a group picture, and then you'll have an opportunity to meet the honorees, and we'll have the buffet dinner served too. Okay. Isabel Wilkerson's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Warmth of Other Suns, traces the migration of black people from a segregated South to the North. Black athletes had a highly visible role in that migration, which is why Jimmy Ray II is being honored today. As an outstanding high school quarterback in segregated North Carolina in the mid-1960s, Jimmy was being heavily recruited by HBCUs when a Michigan State coach saw him excel in an all-star game exclusively for black schools. Head coach Duffy Doherty was far ahead of his time when it came to integration, so Jimmy decided to visit Michigan State. He was impressed by the number of black players on the team, but one of them told him not to come because State already had one black quarterback. Despite that, Doherty kept pursuing Ray when very few predominantly white schools wanted a black quarterback. Eventually, Doherty promised Ray's mother that he would remain one at Michigan State, so Jimmy headed north, where he joined other black Southerners Bubba Smith, Clint Jones, George Webster, and Gene Washington in what was called Doherty's Underground Railroad. Doherty had been inspired by two factors. Michigan State President John Hanna was the first chair of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and Doherty was raised in heavily integrated Barnesboro, Pennsylvania. In 1965, with Ray as backup quarterback, Michigan State won the national title. In 1966, with Ray as the starter and 20 black players on the team, the Spartans shared the title with Notre Dame after they played a controversial 10-10 tie in the so-called Game of the Century. Ray's promotion to starter brought Doherty a lot of hate mail. "I got a chance to start and play because of his courage," Ray said. "So many of the great players were black and from the South, and he couldn't afford to alienate those players." Ray thus became the first black quarterback from the South to win a national title. The only previous African-American championship quarterback had been Minnesota's Sandy Stevens, a Pennsylvania native, in 1960. Typical of NFL teams of that era, in 1968, the Rams drafted Jimmy as a defensive back, a position he had never played before, and then traded him to Philadelphia. He lasted 2 years at defensive back until a fractured arm ended Ray's playing career. Jimmy was headed to law school when Doherty asked him to do some scouting. Soon, an assistant coach got an NFL job, and Ray replaced him. He found he had a passion for teaching and developing players. And in 1977, the San Francisco 49ers hired him as receivers coach. That began a 36-year coaching career in the NFL that lasted until 2013. For 22 years, he was an offensive coordinator with 7 teams. The NFL hadn't had a black head coach since Fritz Pollard in the 1920s, and Jimmy's name regularly was rumored to be the next one. In 1986, New Orleans general manager Jim Finks interviewed him, but the head job went to Jim Mora. "I didn't feel like it was racism," Ray said. "I felt like I was given an ample opportunity to interview for it." In 1993, the Jets interviewed him too, but hired Pete Carroll. "I don't think there was any legitimacy to that interview," Ray said. He believes teams felt he was too old at 47 for a head job. "But I didn't feel that way at all," said Ray. "I felt I was more prepared than the first time." Ray never became a head coach, but he feels no bitterness about it because he enjoyed his work and mentoring black colleagues such as former NFL coach Ray Rhodes and current Michigan passing game coordinator Pep Hamilton. "I didn't get to the top of the mountain, but I don't think that deters in any way from what I accomplished," Ray said. "The relationships I built and people I met, I'm very satisfied with how it went." Unfortunately, Jimmy couldn't join us today because of an illness in his family, so his college frat brother, Greg Reed, will accept his award for him. Greg is distinguished in his own right as a former attorney for Nelson Mandela, Rosa Parks, and one of our honorees, Spencer Haywood. So Greg, please accept the award for Jimmy Ray.
Thank you to be here at this special occasion. The last time I was here, I spoke before the NABJ, and it was a great conference. But it's something special about this award, as they call the Pioneer Award. And each one of these distinguished persons are pioneers in their own right. A pioneer is a person that actually breaks new ground. It's a lonely job in terms of being a pioneer. And when Jimmy called me, he had called about 6 times yesterday looking for me in terms to be here on this occasion. And I started to laugh so heartily, and I just couldn't imagine. I said, "Why are you calling me?" And he said, "Why are you laughing?" I said I was thinking about going to the NABJ because of the people that it attracts. And so it was just a serendipitous moment in order to be here. And I said, why did you ask me for the wonderful people that you know in your life? He said that you represent me because you are a pioneer. I thought, and I said, I thank you for that. He said, for the people's lives that you have touched, Coretta Scott King, Malcolm X, Mandela, Rosa Parks. He said, you represent me. And I thought that was a great honor to come here on this occasion in terms of representing him. As in Jimmy's journey at Michigan State, he was a few years ahead of me when I was there. He helped me a great deal to embody the values that he actually exemplified. When Duffy Daugherty, a lot of people may not recognize that Michigan State genuinely had an underground railroad. This was mentioned throughout the presentation, but it was a systematic process when those players could not play in the South. And so when Duffy Daugherty found out about Jimmy Ray and he approached his mother, he said, as long as he could be a quarterback, I would let him play. But Jimmy didn't get that, the opportunity when he first started. He was a quiet, humble person and a family-style man in terms of his life, he's been married over 40 years. One thing I know about each one of these pioneers, they have traveled a lonely road at a different time of their life. When all the hard knocks, because I used to even study Mr. Perry coming up as a child myself. Those values for each one of these individuals I have taken and embodied in my life in order to touch others. That is Jimmy Ray in terms of it, a quiet, humble man, a person who knows how to face the odds and befriend adversity in order to be a greater person in one's life. When Jimmy came to Michigan State, they had another quarterback, but Jimmy represents the Jackie Robinson of college football that many of you not know in terms of leading a team to the national title as the first black quarterback at a position that was been denied others. He helped me a great deal as well when I was one of the youngest persons in law school as the youngest agent to represent 10 athletes as a law student. Jimmy was a person that touched others in terms of there's a scholarship in his name as well in North Carolina. There's a book called The Ray of Light in terms of the lives that he has touched others. And presently there's a movie out on the Red Cedar River that was produced by Gene Washington. It took a special man to lead Michigan State with all the All-American. No other school in this nation has had more All-Americans at one time, and Jimmy was the leader of that group, the Bubba Smiths, the George Websters, the Baba Pizza, those individuals, the Clint Jones, all became role models in their life. That is Jimmy Ray in terms of a leader, a humble person. And today, Congress has even recognized the work that he has done in leading the underground, and there's a congressional resolution that has been honored in his name today. And I thank you for this moment in order to be here on this great occasion. God bless you all forevermore. Jimmy Ray say, thank you, NABJ.
It's difficult to say which is more true, that Detroit is in Willie Horton's blood or that Willie Horton is in Detroit's blood. The answer is that, like a parent to a child, they cannot be separated. Willie, who moved from Virginia to Detroit when he was 8, was only the 4th black player to wear a Tigers uniform. After playing for them from 1963 to 1977, his 262 home runs ranked 6th on the Tigers' all-time list. He was selected as an All-Star 7 times and became a hero of the Tigers' 1968 World Series by throwing out St. Louis's record-breaking base stealer Lou Brock at home from left field. That was considered the key play that led to the Tigers winning the series. But there is much more to the Tigers' Horton bloodline than that. His mentor, Judge Damon Keith, stressed to him that fans never should be forgotten, and Willie conveyed that warmth so well that they called him Willie the Wonder. I never put the game of baseball before the fans, Willie said. It helped me. It helped me. I used to stop at playgrounds. I stayed at fans' houses on the road and had dinners and lunch. Willie was a child wonder as a ball player. The Tigers' most famous scout, Lou D'Annunzio, started going to his games when Willie was 13, and many other teams courted him while he starred at catcher for Northwestern High School. At 16, he hit a ball into the upper deck of Detroit Tiger Stadium. His precociousness brought Willie many opportunities. At 13, he met the Yankees' great catcher and free swinger, Yogi Berra, who gave him some wise baseball advice. See the ball, hit it. Don't let a fastball get to the catcher. Also at 13, his father, Clint Horton, introduced him to Judge Keith, who remains a key figure in Michigan judicial history. At 96, I'm going to say that again, 96, he still serves on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit in Detroit. Willie was the youngest of 21 children, so his family so his family had little money and lived in the projects. Willie's father believed Judge Keith could give him a rare type of guidance, but it came with a price, self-discipline. Eventually, Willie began living at Judge Keith's house, went home one night, and returned after curfew. He hit me right in the chest, Willie recalled. He said, "Young man, you've got to make a decision tonight. I want you to go back in that room and tell me what you want to do. You can stay here, and I can help you see things to help yourself and your parents. Or you can go back to the projects, and you might be dead before you're 19. Pops, I'm going to stay here, Willie replied. That paid off for him on August 6, 1961, when Keith negotiated a $50,000 bonus from the Tigers for him to sign with Detroit. That bonus is equivalent to more than $400,000 today. In 1967 and 1969, Willie's principles were tested in ways that demonstrate his character. In '67, the Detroit riot that killed 43 people started the day of a Tigers doubleheader in Detroit. After the first game, players were told to go home for their safety. Instead, Willie drove to 12th and Claremont, an area where he used to have a paper route, and while still wearing a Tigers uniform, stood atop his car and futilely urged the rioters to stop looting. He agreed with their complaints, but not their methods. The 1968 World Series victory brought some healing, but a year later, Willie felt dissatisfied because the Tigers weren't calling up enough black players from the minor leagues. Feeling he needed to do something to carry on the legacy of Martin Luther King, who had been assassinated the year before, on May 15th, Willie left the game in the 7th inning and went on his own 4-day strike. Publicly, he explained nothing, but behind the scenes, he voiced his complaint with Tigers owner John Fetzer and general manager Jim Campbell. A month later, they called up Ike Brown, who had been stuck in the minors despite hitting .356 with Detroit's AAA team, and other black players followed. Since retiring as a player in 1980, Willie has supported numerous charities and now is an advisor to Tigers owner Christopher Ilitch and general manager Al Avila. They feel fortunate to have him, and so do we. Willie, now you can get your Pioneer Award. Stay right here. I'm gonna take a picture. All right, I'll keep these for you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to give thanks to the God who's the head of my life, being part of this program tonight. I'd like to thank my wife sitting there, been my supporter through my career, my backbone. And I'd like to thank the Detroit Tiger organization. As a young man, gave me opportunity to live my God talent, ability to be a baseball player. It gave me opportunity. I think I go back some years, and I like to go back and think about Judge Keefe. One of the best things that happened to me in my life as a young man, 13 years old. He gave me a lot of training in and out of courtrooms, a lot of experience meeting judges, lawyers, presidents, Dr. King. I think he gave me something in life that I could have went to college 4 years I never could have got. He gave me a life experience that I took the experience and I had to travel many roads through my career. I'd like to say I'm very humbled tonight to sitting up here with the other honorary accepting this award and the black journalists, in which I mean so much to black athletes like myself and others. We have a long ways to go, and I can appreciate the hard work that y'all put in. There's a lot of things through our career that have been swept up on the floor, but you guys are sitting here and out there that y'all kept a lot of dust on this side of the door that where we all here today. I'd like to just talk a little bit about beginning my career. And I think what Judge Keefe gave me when I left home, I didn't understand racial problem. I experienced in Temple, I took a bus to Lakeland, and I got off the bus and I asked the cab to give me a ride to Tiger Town. He had a yellow cab, checker cab, just like in Detroit. He said, I couldn't take you. In my mind, as a young man leaving home at 17 years old, I thought you hear jokes, how they play rookie jokes on you, or you go to college, they play freshman jokes on you. I said, well, give my bag. And I walked 5 miles to Tiger Town from downtown Lakeland. As I look back in life, it's the best walk I had in my life because it took me beyond the field and do other things. I got to introduce to Bob Hope, went overseas 4 times with him, 6 other times. I'm still involved with the military work at Fort Bennett. And through that walk and journey I go, Ernie Harwell and George Kell, one of the greatest people in my life that gave me his lifetime experience. Ernie used to take me home in Lakeland and talk to me about the future in my career. And I remember one time we sitting there and he said, well, Willie, you don't realize who you are. I said, what you mean? I'm a ball player. He said, you a franchise player. I said, no, I'm a ball player. I thought franchise was something bad. I said, I'm a ball player. He said, what you gonna expect? And he told me about the journey that I'm gonna go on with the Tiger organization. You know, when Jackie Roberts broke the barrier, that went the last of it. I caught 5 years of hell in this town. But I kept it with the walk of my wife, my backbone. She guided me, gave me strength when I needed. When they said you couldn't do it, I said, yes, I can. And you know, I owe all my life, my career to that lady sitting out there. But we all on a journey, and I tell people you always can speak to anyone because each and every one of us write a story and a chapter in our life. I think you can speak to anyone. And I learned that through Judge Keefe by listening, keep my eyes on watch things. And as I go through life, and I got to the Tigers, and I learned about Jackie Robinson more through when I met the great ball player, the Jew ball player, I forget his name, Hank Greenberry. And Ernie Harwell told me how they treated him when he first came up and some of the things I had to go through. And I said, well, I had to play baseball. You know, I'm from Detroit. You know, they've been knowing me all my life as a kid. But you know, the journey I went through, and thanks to Mr. Jim Cameron, he came along and helped kind of clear up the segregation in the Tiger organization. He brought Charlie Dresser in. He brought the Dodgers way, where we kind of mixed ball players and the minor league players together. But the journey you go, I like in my life that it took me young to feel and things that I'm doing in life that I think that is meant for me through God. The things I do, when I got involved in the ride, they said, why you do it? I did it because it's what I'm supposed to do. I didn't think it was a big thing. I just put my clothes in my bag and go over and try to bring peace to the people. But I couldn't do that without the support of the black journalists. I think about the Chronicle. I used to be the paper rock. Mr. Logan, the people who took over the paper. Trailblazer, you know, them the people that the reason we all sitting here tonight. The fatherhood, the motherhood of the black journalists. And that's the reason we all here. And I appreciate that. And people sitting up here, I know, got my buddy on the end over at Rod Parker. I remember he come in from New York. I said, you better get over here. I mean, you got to have a talk. But, you know, this young man was great. I see it in his eyes. What I like about him, he looked at me straight in my eyes when we was talking. And that's when I know he was a good, true man. And he was going to be good for the Black Journal. But, you know, as I go and I think Major League Baseball, it came a long way, but we still got a ways to go. You know, and I think about kids out there playing sports. Now, looking at the sports teams up here, we still got a long ways to go. But it got to be full partnership in the community. And I look back in my life, and I went on a journey 3 years ago, and I said, see, can it work down in Florida, where my pain started with that walk? We started a program down there, and now we all across Polk County, and we're in 3 locations. We got 2,800 foot soldiers in the community. You know, I went in there because in my life, I look back, whether it's racial, color, whatever, during the time, churches and schools was the key to our community. Drugs are going to be here. But you bring them 2 things back together, you get our community back where we know our next door neighbor. We know how to get the paper off the lawn when he go on vacation, cut his grass. That's what I went down. So I told that to Mr. Illich, the story, and he said, well, what you like to do is do it here. I said, I like to go back to Lakeland. And I sat down with 268 school people and church people. And I told them this story, and we started a partnership in the city of Lakeland. Now we're all across Polk County. You know, this thing is, and we named the program the 360 Willie Horton Community Partnership, many hand-like work from the cradle to the grave concept. That's to take care of everybody. We have field trip for the seniors. We have the young athlete help the young seniors, have tailgates, and all that working. And I got involved with some things, and I learned when I used to be at PAL years ago, you don't get help when you need help, but you get help when people help you when you see that you're helping yourself. We went out and started doing it for ourselves. I reached out to Major League Baseball, where I came up. It hurt me at first. I said, why they don't do this? But, you know, we went out and did things for ourselves. As I look back in my life as a young kid, playing baseball at the Jefferson Project in the community. We didn't depend on the Parks and Recreation. We didn't depend on the city. We know how to set our lines up, how to play baseball. And I took that concept in Florida. Now we cross Polk County. It's a good concept, and I remember about 2.5 years ago, Project Hope, President Obama, Bush, and Clinton got a Project Hope. They came down and think this is going to be a model of the country. It's all full partnership. Have field trips, the Buccaneers game, the Rays game. It's all about partnership in life, and that's when I look back, we started working with churches and schools. And I know when we went down there, they were getting body off the street in Lakeland. We had some of the gang kids turn their life around to God. And right today, I still get praise from the chief in Lakeland. I said it wasn't none of me, it was the people. Because sometimes we go into community, we don't tell people what we're going to do. I think the key in life is partnership, but explain to people what you're going to do in their community. Don't go in their community and tell them we're going to do this until you learn how to know how to eat. You know, I think we too far aggressive in life sometimes. We go do things and we leave it, so we done it. But you go in the community and find out first how they eat, how they get a drink of water. And that's what all of these people up here represent. We know how to walk, we know how to get skin tough, but we still got a heart, and that's what life is all about. I'm in closing, some of the words that each one of them got up here and spoke up, I will say, I don't have to repeat it, but that's what we all about, what each and every one of them read off. And I'm just so proud to be here to accept this award, because my whole life belongs to you people. That's what I said. I never put the game before baseball. I always put the people before baseball. And that's how I lived. When they said I couldn't do it, I could do it. I remember they told me I'm 4th year after my second Achilles operation, I couldn't play no more. I played 14 more years because you guys and the strength, knowing that the people there. And that's what this life is all about. And I think what's going on in our life now, I remember about a couple of weeks ago, and I think I mentioned it earlier, I was talking, somebody said, Mr. Horton, what you think going on in our world today? And I said, well, we need a world's prayer. That's what we ought to do. Do a world's prayer, we all would come together, we find the right answer. And I'd like to say thank you, God bless you. It's a great honor to receive this award tonight. Thank you.
A quick public service announcement for our next honoree. Spencer Haywood wants everybody in this room to know that he really had game. Because a lot of people know Haywood for winning a famous court battle, he often has to defend his legacy as a basketball player. Here's some evidence to support his case. At age 19, he led the U.S. Olympic team to the gold medal in 1968, averaging 16 points and shooting 71% from the floor. A year later, he became an instant star in the ABA with the Denver Rockets. As a rookie, he averaged 30 points and 19.5 rebounds. He was so dominant that he was named MVP of the ABA All-Star Game. He was Rookie of the Year and MVP of the season. At 6'9", he was way ahead of his time, showcasing the type of talent for a man his size. Graceful and artistic with the ball in his hands, but a beast under the basket when his team needed a rebound. NBA teams knew about Haywood, but there was nothing they could do about it. At that time, NBA teams could not draft or sign a player until they were 4 years out of high school. The Seattle Supersonics decided to take a gamble and took a break on that and offered Haywood anyway a 6-year, $1.5 million contract in the middle of the 1969-70 season. Seattle was thinking they could get the jump on the rest of the teams and get Haywood under contract before next season. The NBA said no. Before Haywood could play his first game with Seattle, the NBA sued him and the Sonics franchise, claiming his contract was illegal and violated the league's 4-year out-of-high-school rule. Haywood filed a countersuit, claiming the NBA was in violation of antitrust laws and essentially was shutting down his right to earn a living. Haywood spent most of the 1970-71 season in and out of courtrooms to attend hearings, but he did get an injunction that allowed him to play during the trials, but he only played 33 games that year. And when he did play, the game was not fun. Opposing fans booed him. They threw things at him. Opposing players refused to shake his hand, and at one game, the public address announcer made this announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an illegal player on the floor. The game cannot proceed with this illegal player on the floor. Player coach Lenny Wilkins had no choice but to sit him down. But in spite of all the noise, Haywood still averaged 20 points and 12 rebounds in those 33 games. At the age of 21, Haywood had been ridiculed, degraded, and sued, but the pain paid off. Haywood's case had made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and on March 3rd, 1971, the highest court in the land ruled in his favor and forced the NBA to honor his contract with Seattle, and more importantly, scrap that 4 years out of high school policy. The NBA adopted what was then known as the hardship rule, which allowed young players to enter the draft without that 4-year restriction based on financial hardship. There is no hardship rule today, but Haywood's legal victory 47 years ago changed the foundation of basketball in our country. The NBA could no longer keep deserving young players from earning a living. Haywood is the reason why LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, Tracy McGrady, and other guys like that got the right to go to the NBA right out of high school. At 21, Haywood had the courage to stand up to a system and fight for change. He played 14 years in the NBA with 5 teams and was a 4-time NBA All-Star. He retired from the league in 1983 with a career double-double average, 20.3 points and 10.3 rebounds. Yes, he could hoop. But don't get it twisted. The doors to opportunity and prosperity for today's young players will open up by this man right here. To help make the presentation, please welcome Spencer's daughter, Isis Haywood, of Bleacher Report, and the secretary of our sports task force. We are honored to present a 2018 Sam Lacey Pioneer Award to the great Spencer Haywood.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Isis. You have made me so proud of you and what you have accomplished and what you're doing with the National Black Journalists Association. I just appreciate you. And I appreciate you all. I appreciate you because you are amplifying the player's voice 1,000-fold. Without you, we could not have done what we have done, any of us. And the wonderful thing about my journey started down in the cotton fields of Mississippi, Silver City, Mississippi, the Delta. And we were working as sharecroppers for 12 hours a day, praying to the Lord a better day would come. And my mother's theme song was, "He may not come when you want him, but he's always right on time." And I received this award today right on time in my life, because I look back over my career and I look back over what I have created with the young players today. I have excelled now to the chairman of the board of the Retired NBA Players Association. I have over 1,000 players under my banner. And a couple of years ago, I went to Michelle Roberts, who happened to be the first African-American and the first woman to be in charge of a major sports union. I went to her and I asked her, "Michelle, our players are sick. They don't have health insurance. They need certain things that our young players could help us to get." And she called in Chris Paul, LeBron James, and Steph Curry. Those are the leaders of the NBA Players Union. And before I could get out of the door good, they had given us $16 million worth of health insurance per year. Not because of me, but because of what I did back in 1970s come full circle. And those players know, like LeBron, and those guys say to me, you know, I'm $160 million richer because I didn't play the 4 years and I've gotten paid $40 million per year. And the owners come to me and they say, well, you know, my franchise is no longer worth $250 million when you fought this case, but now they are worth $2 billion. So I just look back on my life and say, man, you know, it wasn't me. It was God in control of all of this. It was not me at all. And when I fought all the way to the Supreme Court, I had lower court cases. I had a district court case. And when we got to the Supreme Court and there was Thurgood Marshall sitting on the dais, I said, I'm going to win this case. And my mother, she said, well, you know, don't worry, baby. The Lord has got your back. Don't worry about a thing. He has had your back all the way through from the cotton fields to meet Mr. Will Robinson in Detroit. I had no family here. Will Robinson took me in and adopted me along with James and Ida Bell. They gave me the perfect home to live in, the perfect atmosphere to play in at Persian High School. It's just been, my life has been a miracle, you know? And what I see you people doing today for your athletes and for your entertainers, it is a change coming over in America right now. And the black athlete, like LeBron did last week, just for an example, with the school being open, and Jalen Rose here in Detroit with his school, our way forward is through education. We have to educate and we have to get out and vote. We have to make some changes to better our lives. And we can do that with your help. And I just want to thank you all for just this wonderful journey and this wonderful experience and this a wonderful award. This is like the Hall of Fame twice because this is home. And one more story about my home here in Detroit. I went down when I retired from basketball, and I was down sitting with Coleman A. Young, and he was saying, well, you know, what you want to do, son? I said, I want to put something back in Detroit. I want to do some good. And he said, well, you know, I got some land over there in Black Bottom, and formerly Black Bottom, over at Elmwood Cemetery. And we went over in the car, in this limo, and he said, well, wait a minute now, but one thing, you make sure you stop by the Lafayette Coney Island here and let me get a dog. And everybody in this office was saying, don't let him do it. I'm like, how can I stop him from doing this? And so we went and took a look at the land, and we developed that land, and today that property is sitting right over there, right up against Elmwood. It is my property, not all of it, but a lot of it is. And it is called Circle Drive. And you ride by, you take a look, and that's what Detroit meant to me. I took my pension money, and said, I believe in Detroit, and I will invest in Detroit in 1992, and I did it. And I thank you all for this wonderful city, this wonderful life you've given me, because a poor boy from Silver City, Mississippi could not have made it without this and without Detroit. And I thank you for the NABJ. Thank you so much, and you're doing incredible work, and thank you all, and God bless you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful time. And Isis, I'm so proud of you. You're so wonderful. Thank you.
Well, can we give all of our honorees a round of applause? Well, we're right on schedule tonight, and so for the first time, we thought we would give you all in the audience a chance to ask some questions of our honorees. So I have a microphone that can be passed from one honoree to the next. We have George Richards in the back here has a microphone, which if you raise your hand, he will bring the microphone to you. We're only going to have about 10 minutes for the Q&A. So we ask that you ask one honoree one question, and that way we'll try to get to as many people as we can.
Hello and good evening. My name is Claudette Delahaye of Caribbean Financial Network News. I'd like to address Mr. Haywood. Mr. Haywood, you and I go back a long time when I was a young girl coming to America to work with a man called Howard Stocker on Northwestern Highway at the Sinai Building. Tonight is very special for me. I never imagined I would become a journalist, let alone for Caribbean media. An honest girl working in a pharmacy. And in one day walks a man taller than a mountain with a smile as wide as Northwestern Highway. And he spoke of the aspirations of his life going on to play tennis and give back to the community. And tonight, in my 30th year of being in America, I walk in here and lo and behold, find you at the podium being honored. So it is my honor in my first year as Caribbean Financial Network News that I hope you do inspire me to do Caribbean sports. But I'm equally proud of you, and you are very much a part of my own history. Thank you for blessing my life, and God bless you. I'll be up to get my hug later.
Oh, yes, thank you. And gosh, I played a lot of tennis. I still do. And I remember when we used to play over at Metropolitan Racket Club here. I know some of you ladies know where it is. And I was really thought I had like some pro tennis players. My daughters, Isis and Shakira and Zuleika, they were playing tennis, and they were like, you know, we're going to be the one. And all of a sudden, they came to my room one night in the bedroom and said, you know what? We don't think we want to play tennis anymore. We want to play basketball. And I was like, oh, my gosh. But it's so wonderful, that story. And I used to travel the Caribbean, you know, and play all over. And I just love the Caribbean, just like I love Detroit. Thank you.
This question is for Brenda Gatlin. I am so honored to be here. You took 3 young ladies from the Brewster Projects. You didn't have any children, and you were not married. You have sold so much of your life into children. If it had not been for you, I don't know where we would be. Because all we knew that we were around was drugs, pimps. And no one knows that when we played basketball, we were the first women to hit 150 points, 160, 125. No man to this day has broken our record. And because of you, I'm standing here as a minister, a mother, a coach. I thank my sisters here. All 3 of us thank you, because we stayed at your house. My mother was on drugs, and you just sold and poured. And not only that, you did that to all the women. People have not really told your story. It needs to be on stage, TV. because you've never been married and you sold your whole life into children. And thank you.
Testing. Thank you, Annette. And I tell you, it was a pleasure and an honor to be a part of that Northeastern journey back in the 60s and 70s. And players like you and the Williams sisters and Sylvia, and then on to Cass Tech with LaTanya Tate, just outstanding young ladies. We saw the potential, and we wanted you to experience greatness, and you did. So I am immeasurably grateful to have had that opportunity to work with you, and also with the journalists back there. I don't know if you remember Luther Keith. At the inauguration of the 20-game basketball schedule, Luther was right there, and he was the one that really followed us. We were in print, and I agree with the statement that was made that you are just amazing individuals, journalists. You can make us or you can break us, but you do a great job. Thank you. Thank you, Annette, for those comments.
Anyone else? Well, I actually have a question for Rob Parker, because since there's so much emphasis placed on mentoring young people, and also I have my students here, and also students from other colleges are here, I just wondered if there were 3 particular tips you'd like to give an aspiring sports journalist to make a successful career.
I always say you have to outwork everybody. Like, if you're not going to embrace, this is a competitive business, competitive job. You got to embrace it and really put all into it. You already know you're working nights, you're working weekends, you're working holidays, and if you're not willing to make that commitment to this business, it's going to be very, very hard, because there's so many people who would love to have that job and talk about sports and go to games for a living. And so that's it. And the other part is about asking for help and getting a mentor, people who have already been through it and already know what it takes. You got to get that knowledge from those people who have been there and are in those positions that you want to be down the road. So those would be the things I say to young people, and obviously the education part of it. You got to work hard and do well in school. So if you put those 3 things together, and the other one is don't be afraid to fail. The reason most people don't succeed in life is because they're afraid to fail. It's okay. People bump their heads all the time, but that doesn't mean that you can't dream about it, wish about it, and also achieve it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I think we have
one more question.
Hello to all the distinguished honorees. My name is Patricia Hicks, and I have a question for the lovely Brenda Gatlin. I know that all of you gentlemen on the stage had to endure some struggles and barriers, but I was wondering for Ms. Gatlin, did you ever have to endure a struggle or hardship as a female pioneer and athletes in the city of Detroit?
We had many battles, and Patricia Hicks was one of our former players, too, at Cass Tech. I didn't see her over there. Let's give her a round of applause, along with LaTanya. Thank you. They're putting me on the spot, yes. Many hardships, racially and gender-wise. I'll never forget, and you know, we have old war stories, but in 1974, we knew we should have won another state championship, and that was the first time as a coach I sat on the sidelines, and my players came to me, and they were playing so hard. And when calls are made to defeat your players, when fouls are called on them and they're all out there by themselves, not even around anybody, they looked at me, and I remember Annette came to me and she said, "Coach, what are we going to do?" And we lost that game by 1 or 2 points, and the team that we lost to were eventual champions. They won the second state championship in the history of Michigan. And you have to get yourself together as a coach and make sure that you instill in your players that that's about life. Life is not always fair, but we don't give up. We keep striving until we have the victory. And in 1975, we kept striving, and we had the victory. The boys, that was really interesting. I remember the reporters, they were everywhere, and one of the biggest questions was, where are you going to have your team meeting, the girls or the boys' locker room? And I said, you know, in the boys' locker room. That's where they should be, and that's where we met. I was talking to Coach Burke also, and we just looked at the history of girls basketball, because we came up when we played 6 players. And then they graduated to 5 players with 5 games. And I remember just before Title IX, we were sitting around with many other coaches who were a little bit older than we are, and they said, no way, girls cannot play full court basketball. And the same schedule as boys, no way. No way, they just don't have the stamina. And please forgive me, but this was a comment. And their uteruses will drop. And I'll never forget that. I mean, those were the conversations we had back in the day. And we knew what our young ladies could do. So we've come a long ways. We've come a long ways. We've been entrenched in those battles. Gender equity and racial diversity and all of those things. Yes, I've had some battles, I have, but it's all been worth every minute of it, yes, because of young ladies like this. Thank you.
All right, and we have one questioner in the front here.
My question addresses to Scott Perry. I never told him this, but I'm giving away my age, but back in 71, 72, his father and Willis Ward walked in the locker room and came over to my locker and said, son, is there anything we can do for you? We know you're playing out of position. They said, we can talk to Freddie. Freddie couldn't say anything to Johnny, but they did come up to me. And his father was concerned about any athlete at the University of Michigan back then. And it's quite an honor, Scott, for you to be the GM of the Knicks and following your father and your brother's footsteps. And I'm proud of you and proud of what you've done. And everybody here is standing on shoulders that came before them. And Scott, you're standing on some broad shoulders, man. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for that, John. You know, there's not a, you know, my dad's been gone now 17 years, but there's not a day that I wake up where there's something that happens in my life that I don't think about him and a number of the lessons that he taught me. And so I you know, it's like he's living this journey with me right now. I know he's, you know, in this, you know, his presence is in this room now, but every day that I go to work, you know, I always ask myself, you know, what would he do? And he was someone that always wanted to try to again, like I mentioned earlier, help anybody any way he could. I'm glad to hear that story. That was my first time, and I've known you for a long time. But it just, you know, he was a blessing for me. If I can become half the man that he was, I would feel like that I've been a success in this world. So appreciate the words.
All right, well, thank you all very much. It's been an honor for us to be here, and I thank all of you for coming today. I'd like to bring up our chair, Sherrod Blakely, to make some closing remarks. Sherrod?
Good evening. I am going to be short and brief because I know as much as I enjoy, like you all, this food for thought, need a little food for the belly too. So, first off, I just want to thank MLB, our presenting sponsor, for once again showing great support for not only the Sports Task Force, but also the Sam Lacey Pioneer Awards. So again, another round of applause for MLB. Just listening to all these award recipients, the one thing that just kind of kept resonating throughout my mind was, as great as each of their individual accomplishments were, they realized that the journey that they were on, the trail that they were blazing, would set the tone for others to follow. And they didn't just go forward and hope that others would follow. They put a hand back and brought others with them. I love the testimonials that Brenda, your former players all had. To me, that's what this is about. That is a true pioneer, and so that was great to see. Rob Parker, when he asked all of his mentees to stand up, including me, it shows the power that you can have, and it's a reminder of what a true pioneer is, someone who doesn't just make an impact because of what they do, but also an impact on the lives that they touch. That being said, I'm just going to close it with that and just say enjoy the rest of your evening, enjoy the meal, and we'll do this again next year. Thank you.